Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get your drink, get yourself settled, we're going to start here momentarily. All right. That was quick. Great audience. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today, or joining us at the New York Republican Club. We are here joined by Carl Higbie. Carl Higbie is the anchor of the Newsmax show Frontline and a former Navy SEAL. Higbie was deployed twice to Iraq and various other theaters around the world during an almost decade-long military career. He later served as spokesman for Great America PAC and as an advisor to President Donald J. Trump. A veteran, a business owner, and a serial entrepreneur and intrepid outdoorsman, Higbie is the author of Battle on the Home Front, a Navy SEAL's mission to save the American dream, enemies, foreign and domestic. A SEAL story and crisis of culture, the political battlefield of the new Civil War. And we are now here for his new book, Profiles in Freedom. So everybody join me in welcoming Carl Higbie.
Thank you. I'm glad we got this light thing tuned down. He was like, "Are these fine?" I was like, "No, I can't see anybody." No, I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate what you do here. You know, keeping people Republican in New York is not that easy. So we got out of the cab on the way here, and I was just like, I have no idea where this place is. And I'm looking around, I'm like, definitely not it, definitely not it, definitely not it. So we had to call someone to help us figure out where this was. But so, you know, obviously the reason I'm here is to hawk books shamelessly. But the importance of this one for me was, it was a little bit different. It was about restoring something that the left is trying to strip away from us. They're trying to take history out of literally everything, because then that allows them to do whatever they want. They can, you know, impose, as Nancy Pelosi so kindly said on national TV last week, revisionist history, even though we had her words on camera admitting that January 6th was probably her fault. So, you know, with a book like this, there's 19 people in here. I wanted to put a whole lot more, but we had, for lengthwise, we had to cut them down. But 19 people in here are, you know, very pivotal parts to how this country was founded, from everything from the very beginning in the 1600s to a guy named Dermer who died just in 1993. It was funny, I was on Greg Kelly's show the other night, and he asked me, "Hey, so who's this Dermer guy?" And I'm like, Greg, you know, like, I'm thinking to myself, this is the most boring guy in the entire book. And that's the one guy he picked to ask me on the broadcast. I didn't want to be like, well, he was, you know, kind of a revolutionary guy in data collection and led to the Census Bureau and a number of other things, and his data, his algorithms were used in things like the Patriot Act to catalog data and things like that. So that was a little bummed that he asked me about the most boring guy first in the book, but hey, can't win them all. But, you know, folks like George Washington, everybody knows, obviously, who George Washington is, but what people don't know is that he actually was denied a commission in the British Army because he wasn't officer material. So he was like, well, fuck you, check this out. But stories behind the stories. And also, there's a lot of people in here that, you know, you may not have heard of, or even those you have. There's always someone behind them that kind of gave them a foundation to be who they became, and to show someone else something that they took and then did something great with. And I think that's an important thing that we don't recognize. The book is dedicated to a friend of mine, Brad Wallace, a high school wrestling coach, and he had a saying that he used to tell me. He was like, "Hey, never half-ass anything, whole-ass everything." And so I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting motto. It doesn't leave a lot of room for me slacking off. So I kind of lived my whole life by that phrase. And maybe like 5 years ago, I told him, "Hey, Brad, you know, that phrase you told me in high school really meant the world to me." He goes, "What the hell are you talking about?" I was like, you know, I told him what the phrase was, and he was like, "I have no recollection of that whatsoever." I was like, dude, I lived my whole life by that. Are you kidding me? So the book is dedicated to him because of that one phrase that he didn't remember. But I think that, you know, everybody's had someone like that in your life. You never know who you're going to become or who you're going to meet or anything like that. And these people are perfect examples of sometimes ordinary people that did extraordinary things. And without extraordinary things being done, we lose this republic. I mean, well, we talked about it on the show tonight. Every major empire, every government, every civilization, they peak at about 250 years on average. We're at 248. And I'm looking at what's going on now, and I'm saying, like, this is the last election. Like, this is the last one that we're going to have a chance to really turn things around, because there's going to be so many protocols put in place if Republicans don't win that are going to block not only Republicans from ever being able to change legislation almost ever again, but I think fundamentally transform this country. And this is, Donald Trump, whether you like him or not. I happen to really like the guy, but I also like my mean tweets over coffee every morning. But he is the one guy that I believe can actually take this thing and is, dare I say, impulsive enough to actually do some good governing. Because everybody else in D.C., and we've seen this with the Republicans, we had it under, when Barack Obama was president, Paul Ryan, who's Republican, he passed this Obamacare repeal like 66 times when Obama was president. And then the second Trump becomes president, they didn't pass it one time. I'm like, well, what the hell is the point? And it's all smoke and mirrors. And you need someone who's going to say, like, hey, look, let's actually slash the Department of Education. Hey, why don't we repeal the 16th Amendment while we're at it so the federal government can't tax you anymore? There's rumor that he may have said that today with the meeting with those folks. But it's somebody who's actually willing to do it and just say, just get it done, or you're fired. And we don't have anything like that in the future. And I think it's also vital for his VP candidate. I happen to be a Byron Donalds fan, but there's a lot of good candidates on there. Whoever we're going to put on that ticket, or he's going to put on that ticket, is going to probably be the next president in 2028. So, the ability to continue this fight. And that's why I love younger groups like this, where people are like, hey, I want to get more involved. I want to help out these campaigns. And I do this I was in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is Republican. That's where the Bushes are from. So, I was on the town council maybe, 5 years ago or something like that. And I decided to run after I got out of the Trump administration. And they were like, oh, Carl, look, we're not really a Republican town that much. So you got to really moderate. Like, we're pro-choice in this. Don't talk about cutting that too much, and don't do this and don't do that. And I was like, the hell with you guys. I'm just going to run on whatever it was I felt was right. So I basically went in there, was like, I'm going to burn everything down in this town that I can and absolutely destroy all your regulations. I'm going to stop spending stupid money on sidewalks, and we're going to rebuild this school, but we're not going to tap into, capital funds and all this and that. And I ended up winning by the largest margin. And I looked back at the Republican Party, and I was like, you guys really don't know what you're doing. And that's like the historic Republican Party. Our message is so damn good. It's so good. It's like, get out of my wallet, get out of my bedroom, get out of my face, get out of everything. Don't tax me more than you should. Don't tell me what to do. Don't be in my face. Don't shove agendas down my throat. And the left somehow is like, well, let's have a bunch of minority children in Guyana mining our cobalt barefoot so we can drive electric cars and smell our own farts. And somehow every election it's still like a 50-50 proposition. And I'm like, what how little do we have to do right? Like, what are we doing wrong that's just not getting our message across? And I reference a lot of these in this book, whereas people who would just say, like, the Republican Party now, the way it wins is you raise your hand and just say, does anybody else think this is totally crazy? And that's going to be the message going into 2024, because so many people are so sick and tired of some of the crazy shit that is coming out of this administration. So, when you're asked to get involved in a campaign, I always, I tell the candidates that I've worked with in the past or that I know or things like that, I'm like, hey, look, the people that are putting the bumper stickers on their cars, they're putting the signs in their lawn, they're donating to your campaign, they're making phone calls, like, you need to listen to them. And like, they might be hardliners on a number of issues, but like, you need to listen to them. Don't moderate, don't compromise, don't do, like, if you stick to values, it's like same thing with Donald Trump. He came down in 2015, he was like, sup, I'm new to this, but like, we're getting a bunch of rapists and gang members off the southern border, and they were like, all right, cool. But he stuck to his guns. Maybe he was wrong about a few things here and there, but he's like, I don't really care, that's how I feel. And that's what I think Republicans need to take away from not only this book, but, the future of this country. Because at 248 years, I'm looking at like, on average, we got 2 years left if we don't turn it around. So with that said, I think I'm supposed to take some questions or something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, first of all.
Oh, thank you. out. We can go back to pizza.
I'm
Oh,
all
yeah.
on board for Trump and stuff, except for, you know, the only problem I have with that, like, I like what Vivek says about, you know, reshaping the CIA and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not so sure Trump will do that on his own.
Are you kidding me? He was targeted by the CIA.
I was.
Like, Trump is really pissed off at our intel community right now.
Right, because, like, you can't put people like Mike Pompeo in if you want to drain the swamp, right?
Right.
So, obviously, the corporate capture that the Rothschild family have, the Trump family in Ukraine with their breadbasket and energy and all that stuff. Like, is someone really going to put a stop to all that stuff? You can stop the corporate capture and manipulation of everything, you know? I'm not sure anybody can do it. I mean, RFK says he can do it. Vivek says he can do it. I don't know how. Do you know anything about being on the inside with Trump?
I mean, look, I know for a fact, like I said, that Trump is super not happy with the intelligence community. And I think, you know, the federal government on the intel side, the law enforcement side, is massively bloated right now. We have 37,200 something FBI, people who work for the FBI, 14,000 in any given year are actual agents. There's 2 million people on the terrorist watch list, and somehow they don't know where 92% of them are. So it's like, what do you guys do there? Like, you could probably make some cuts and you wouldn't lose any functionality because we don't have any to begin with. But I don't have any inside knowledge to what he might do or will do or anything like that. I just know that he's really not happy with those guys, especially after all this Russia hoax and, you know, going back to the Steele dossier.
Great. Do you think that a potential putting Trump in jail will actually backfire in terms of getting more support?
100% yes. Like, he will win from jail. He will absolutely win from jail. Because we don't do that here in America. And I think most people, like, look, my mother-in-law is, like, about as liberal as you get. And she's like, this seems really fishy to me. I might have to vote for him. And I was like, shit, it's over.
I have a question. I guess just like looking around, you see New York and just the decline of our cities in general. I think that's just a consequence of living in a world where there aren't consequences. So I guess in your opinion, what does accountability look like to you just among the general pop, but also among the, I guess, politicians on all sorts of levels that are just enabling all these bad behaviors?
Yeah, that kind of starts with Congress, and there's this little slush fund. It's got about $30 million in it. $17 million have been paid out over the last 5 to 6 years for sexual assault claims, so we don't find out about it. Like, how many people, by a show of hands, know who the other guy was in that video with the Senate briefing room when the two guys were having sex in there? Like, who's the other guy? Like, it was somebody, but that
I was told it was a German.
you were told that, but we don't know. And why? Because Congress has this huge slush fund that they just pay people out so things go away, sometimes in election years, and they don't pay porn stars, and yet nobody there goes to jail, but Trump might. So, you know, accountability comes down to the fact that you have to have somebody who's been screwed over enough in order to really do it. I mean, like, look what Rudy Giuliani did here in New York. It was remarkable. I mean, he took on violent crimes, gangs, everything like that. I mean, there's a lot of organizations within the government that are just doing it because they wrote a law that allows them to do it, but they're just as organized and they're just as corrupt as some of the gangs that Rudy Giuliani had to strip off the streets. So you need somebody who's like, look, honestly, like, and like, I'm not stumping for Trump here. I'm not on the campaign or anything like that. I don't represent him in any way. But like, my man has been screwed over more times than anybody else. He's the most investigated guy in the world. And if anybody's going to straighten that ship, it's going to be him. Just start slashing stuff.
Yeah, and I think I saw today. Great answer. I don't know if it's fake news or not, so I don't want to quote it, but there was something that I
Put it on Facebook. See what happens. I'll tell you.
I know, I'm from Long Island, so it is the QAnon capital of America, I'm pretty sure. But I think Trump had said, allegedly at least, that he didn't want vengeance in his future term if he were to win, just to not perpetuate the cycle. So I guess, do you see it maybe going like, fuck all of them, Hillary's going to jail, or how do we turn the ship around and just create peace among both sides?
If I was going to burn it down, would I want him to see me coming? Probably not. So, no, I look, I mean, he's like, I know the guy. He's not a vengeful person, but he is like, hey, if I don't do something about this is just going to keep happening. And, you know, you can put the minions in jail. Like, you can fire the McCabe's from the FBI and you know, Peter Strzok's and stuff like that. But unless you get the people who are actually behind it, like you really track them down. And they get these 51 former intel officials. They're like, hey, this Hunter Biden laptop, total Russian disinformation. We're putting our security clearances behind us, and we're telling you that this is actually just a campaign stunt. It's not really true. And then it gets entered into evidence like a couple years later, and we're all sitting there and be like, just like COVID, we told you so. So unless you get rid of those guys, like if you send 51 former intel officials to jail for lying on the basis of their thing, then maybe you won't have 51 more than the next time. So maybe.
Question in the back.
Biden's going to be the nominee ultimately, or do you think they're going to swap him out eventually?
Dude, this is one of those things, like, I don't know, were you watching the G7 today? Biden, like, everyone's watching this dude parachute in. He's packing up their parachute. They're shaking. Biden just turns around and starts walking off on this, like, golf course. And someone else had to come grab him and bring him back. The guy has no idea where he is. I don't understand how he's going to... He agreed to these debates in, like, 2 weeks or something like that? I can't imagine him. I thought for sure, I was 100% sure that when he said, hey, we'll debate you, Trump was like, anytime, anywhere, they came out with like 50,000 demands. I thought that they thought that Trump was going to be like, no, I want to do this, and then they were going to scrap the whole thing. Trump was like, screw it, I don't care. I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want. To be honest, man, I don't know. I can't imagine how he's going to stand in another election. I mean, they can't, unless they're going to come up with this bird flu thing and push everybody back into their basements again. I mean, stranger things have happened, right? So.
One question. So, as a veteran, and I think this is a common thread, that we have patriots in the military and then the military bureaucracy. For example, like Milley and others higher ranking in the military that are not. They seem to have an allegiance towards the left or these what we call woke ideologies, deep state. But then the enlisted men, the people that sign up, people like yourselves, they break rank, so to speak, and aren't afraid to speak out. So we can speak on this divide in the military and more details about this, what we call people being promoted based off of these DEI principles or allegiance to the left versus patriots in the military. How do you feel?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the day that Hunter Biden was convicted, his dad also gave a speech on gun control and talking about background checks. I'm like, who is running your comms? Like, who let that guy out of his cage that day? But, yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. So Biden comes up there and he goes, oh, you should AR-15s and blah-blah-blah-blah. And then he said, well, if you're going to take on the government, you need F-15s. And I'm thinking, that's like a nice talking point. He's used that a few times. But, like, who the hell flies those F-18s? It's a bunch of people that think exactly like us. It's not, like, they're not Democrats flying F-18s. Like, there are people behind that. And I've talked to a lot of my buddies and there are these purity tests in the military where they will like do these soft asks, like kind of, hey, buddy old pal, like, where do you think you'd stand on an issue like this? They do these things all the time at like command functions, and they do it very subtly, just kind of seeing who would do what and if stuff would happen, like in the event of this, would you know, and every guy that I know, everybody in the military is like, there is zero chance I would fire on American citizens. Like, they declare martial law, yeah, I'm not taking part in that. They can pound sand. I think the bunch of generals and admirals that had to bend the knee to get to that rank, they'd be trying to order people like me around. I'm like, dude, look, I'm like 100 pounds heavier than you. I'm better at shooting, and I'm just not gonna do that. So I think that there's the woke problem in the military is really bad right now. Like, I was talking to someone around here who does something with, I don't remember who, yeah, you, about, this wokeism in the military, how it's affecting us. It's like, the military is there pretty much just to like kill bad guys and break their stuff. And if you start working on like, my first deployment, we were over there for 9 months and we just like basically darn near killed every bad guy we came in contact with. And then 2009, I was there under Obama, and he was like, yeah, we're going to stop doing combat operations because we don't want to make it look like there's no more bad guys here. I'm like, but there's a ton of bad guys here. Well, we want to make it look like there's not bad guys. I'm like, but we're still like, and one of my friends ended up getting killed because of these rules of engagement, which is why I wrote my first book. And that was kind of a big awakening for a lot. 40% of the teams got out that year because we were court-martialed for prisoner abuse. Have you guys seen the movie American Sniper? So you know that guy running around drilling holes in people's head with like a DeWalt? So we caught that guy in real life. And we take him back, we hand him over to the CIA or other government agency, and they do their thing. And then like we get this like notification like 24 hours later from NCIS, not like the TV show, like the actual dorks that are running around. So they were like, hey, he's claimed prisoner abuse, and they said that you hit these 8 people hit him. And I'm like, well, first off, like, how does he know that much? Like, he was blindfolded the entire time. So we were like, how does he know this much about who was who? Like, it was a very choreographed statement. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, this guy is like 130 pounds, like, 6 feet tall. I'm 260 at the time. Like, if I hit this guy, like, this doesn't add up. So we all end up going to this pre-trial. We have to we all lawyer up and we go to this pre-trial, and they're like, hey, you guys, we got to do this. We got to go through these motions to make it seem like, we're catering to the Iraqi government because the war is winding down, and we want to make sure that, no one's above the law and all this bullshit. So they drop charges on me and 4 other people. 3 more go to trial. They fly everybody back to Baghdad. They pay the Iraqi government to keep this guy alive so he can testify against U.S. troops during during his own trial, and just to be hung by the Iraqis literally like a week after the trial. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, holy shit, this is bad. We go over there, we're all acquitted, everything. Ruins our careers though. Like, it absolutely destroyed like 50 people's careers. Anybody who was attached to our unit was like persona non grata. I didn't get my ticket to Dam Neck, which is SEAL Team 6, and a bunch of other people, we lost our tickets there. So we were like, fuck it, we're getting out. So 40% of the SEAL teams got out that year, and all these recruiters were like, oh, well, we need to like do all this and get all these people back in. And nobody thought about the fact that, like, hey, maybe we should just retain the guys that we just spent like $20 million training. And so they were like, we're going to recruit all these. So they go to like Harvard and MIT. And the best was, my favorite was they wanted to recruit more black people into the teams because it's extreme. There's like 2 total. So they were like, because we're doing operations in Africa now, we're going to recruit more black people into the team and then teach French. Well, nobody like did the research that like there's a very big cultural difference between American black people and African black people. And all the African black people, when I was there, were like, we would rather talk to you. And I'm like, but I don't speak French. And they're like, that guy does. And they're like, well, we don't want to talk to him. And so, I mean, this is the same logic that is like permeating, or it's like this weird DEI thing that's permeating, that where they're checking boxes. So they ended up lowering the standards because they couldn't get enough people to come back in. And so they're spending $5 million to get a single guy through SEAL training. He gets to the team, and we didn't change the requirements, like, because we're going to war, because we didn't really want to compromise that. I know, weird. But so we go, we get to the team. So you go through like 7 months of buds after, a couple weeks of INDOC and your boot camp before that. Then you go to like another 7 or 8 months of SEAL training. Then you go to another like 4 months in Alaska for cold weather training, where they plop you in the Bering Sea and they're like, see you in a week. And then you finally check into your team, at which point you have 18 more months of training before you're actually a SEAL. And the problem is, during that 18 months, like, there's no rules. Like, I was kind of a smartass, if you could believe it. And they like hung me up naked and shot me with gunpowder propelled paintballs for 4 hours, and I kept my mouth shut for like the next 30 days. But they, guys were failing the training at the team because like we were allowed to, kind of be flexible. The people they were sending us, because of these initiatives, which was like, we have to get this, we have to get that, we have to get people from MIT and, more intelligent people. And I was like, well, thanks for the vote of confidence, guys. And so they would get to the team and they would just drop out. They would, or fail, or sometimes die. And I mean, these are like high risk, high intensity things. And so nobody at this point thought, well, hey, maybe we should just go back to the old system, and maybe we should be a little bit better to our guys. And that was kind of the beginning of the downfall. That was 2012, 2013. It was really the beginning of the downfall, but it was like kind of its own little tip of the iceberg of what was going on a mass statute right there. They since opened SEAL training up to women, and all the SEALs were like, dude, this is crazy. Like, forget, ability. Like, we have this unit cohesion that shouldn't be messed with. Like, it's really like, there's only 1,400 active duty SEALs. There's not like a lot of us. There's like 75,000 Army Rangers. So like, don't mess with our little weird dynamic that we have here. We're all like, you know, a little messed up in the head, but we're really good at killing bad guys. So they open it up to women, and you know, they put all these women through, and they're lined up, and some pass the initial screening, some pass the first, you know, week of INDOC. There's 5 weeks of INDOC, but not one made it past the second week of INDOC. Like, not even into first phase. Like, forget Hell Week. And they're still like dumping millions of dollars into studies to find out how they can still continue to get women in. I'm like, maybe it just doesn't work. And at no point do these generals who hire people to write white papers, this is like one of my #1 issues, so I know I'm rambling on this, but like, this is life and death. They hire these white shoe people from places like MIT, the same people that we don't want in the teams in the first place, to write these papers about how they need these people because diversity is our strength. And it's like, I don't really care if you're black, white, blue, green, like, I don't care if you're a Martian. If you can save my ass in a gunfight, who cares? But they're putting people in that deliberately don't belong there. And, you know, as we've seen with people like Milley, like, I want to understand white rage. I guarantee you he doesn't care what white rage is, but it makes it good on his fit rep. And I told Trump, like, when we were on the transition team back in 2016, I was like, look, dude, if you want to fix this, you need to put war fighters next to 4-star generals and tell them, this warfighter who just came back from theater is going to write that general's eval on whether or not he gets promoted or not, or demoted. And Trump was like, yeah, that was a good idea. And then it shifted down, and all the same people, the jackasses in the middle that I told you about, that, you know, would literally just not do it. Because, oh, that's not how we do things, sir. We've always done them this way. I'm like, well, like, we had a sign outside of our platoon, and it said, because we've always done them this way, and had a big cross through it, like a Ghostbuster sign. Because that's like the mantra. It's like, well, we've always done it this way. You're like, if we've always done it this way, then like we would never evolve from anything. So the military is a complicated issue, but that's definitely the tip of the spears. The biggest problem facing, you know, our global stance right now is the fact that people don't even believe we're going to use the military. I mean, we have 11 carrier battle groups. You know, we have it's like we have a something that's like the size of 4 football fields that goes 60 miles an hour. It carries like 500 planes and 5,000 people. Like, it's so big that when we get off in a port, we will literally drink all the alcohol. There's like none left in the whole town. Like, it's that big, and that's one. And we have 11 of these things. And you know, I look around at the world today, and there's, you know, the Air Force is the largest air force in the world, and the second largest air force in the world is the Navy, and the 5th largest air force in the world is the Marine Corps, which is the Department of the Navy. So like, somewhere in there, we spend more on defense than the next 25 countries combined. So somewhere in between there, like, we have to be willing to, or at least give the presumption that to our enemies that we'll be willing to use that, and they are so over this stuff. You know, China's like probably going to go into Taiwan in the next 4 months. Like, you've got this Ukraine debacle, you've got, you know, Israel and stuff like that. Like, you know, it's shocking to me that we're just not like, yeah, I'm gonna park an aircraft carrier and like 5 destroyer off, and then I'm just gonna fly F-35s over your house at 3,000 miles an hour until you shut up and go home. And we don't do that. Like, we don't even do that. So, and it's all because there's like this risk averse, like afraid to do things. It's like, war is killing people, and it's not pretty, but if you don't want to go to war, then our enemies need to think we will, and we don't do that. So that was a long-winded answer.
What about the Russian warships that, like...
Oh, well, so, yeah, there's like, yeah, just like floating into Havana, like, check this out, I get this nuclear submarine, but 30 miles off your coast. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, though, so I was thinking about this, actually, like, imagine if you were sitting on a warship, okay? You got war posture, and they're like, hey, you know what? We need you to go park your boat off the shore of China. And China's like, what is this guy thinking here? Like, you're probably thinking, like, every day am I going to get, like, blown out of the water? Because you got a bunch of Russian troops that have never been, like, outside of Moscow, okay? Like, let's be honest. Like, if you live in Russia, you don't exactly travel the world. So I don't think you're allowed to leave. But, so these guys are sitting there, like, on edge, ready to go to war. We're sitting there on edge, like, how many young American military guys are like, oh, that's a Russian ship. I think there was a warning put out in Florida, like, don't shoot at the Russian ships, please. And I was like, this is why we rock. But I think that, this is going to dissolve quickly. Like, you elect someone like Trump, it is like those ships are on the way back to Russia.
Do we really need those 802 bases we have worldwide? You've been in the military. Is this something we should spread or concentrate, or do you have an opinion?
Yeah. Do we need the bases, as many bases worldwide? No, we don't. And this is the problem with the DoD is like the Department of Defense gets like $900 billion, our tax dollars. They can't find $250 billion from last year. They have no idea where it went. Over the last 20 years, they can't account for $17 trillion in assets. They're like, I have no idea where that stuff went. Like 20 years? Like, are you guys kidding me? The F-35 program was like $1.75 trillion, and they got them crashing in West Virginia. It's like, look, I can buy a Cessna on like eBay for like $185,000, and I have a better flight record than the Osprey program that crashes like 1 out of every 8 flights. So there's a lot of waste in the Pentagon, like a lot of waste in the Pentagon. You have the Department of Redundancy department oversees the Department of Redundancy, and you have civilian contractors. Like I have a buddy who was a nuclear sub technician. This guy, great guy. He was like, you know what? I've been in for 8 years. I decide I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out and be a civilian contractor. So he was getting paid like, I don't know, 85 grand a year as an E7, overseeing something to do with the nuclear something. I don't even know. And so he quits on a Friday, the military, gets out, and he's getting disability for whatever. And then he starts on a Monday in the same building at the same desk doing the same job with the same department for $200,000 as a civilian, and then they bring in another military guy to fill his old position. And so like they created that position, and this is how the growth of government happens. They created that position, and then because he was a civilian in charge of stuff now, they had to backfill people that had to work for him. Never mind, they didn't need it. There was nothing to do because he was doing the same thing that they just brought another guy in to do. So now you have 2 people doing the same job, but because he's a certain ranked civilian, they go to the ultimate book, and it says, oh, he must have 2 people working for him. So they go out and they create 2 new positions, and they hire 2 new people, and there go more of our tax dollars. So when you say, do we need the 802 bases? No, because we're America, and if we need a new base somewhere because another war breaks out, we just go turn an area into a parking lot and take it because we have 11 aircraft carriers.
Very good.
You.
Hi, you work at Newsmax now.
I do? No, I'm
you-
just kidding.
I know that many mainstream media struggle with.
my boss says, maybe not tomorrow.
I know many mainstream media news sources struggle with accuracy and struggle with reporting the news accurately. How do you make sure you avoid the pitfalls that a lot of mainstream media news outlets fall into so often?
Well, I mean, we just listen to the fact checker. No, I'm just kidding. No, we don't listen to fact checkers. No, I think one of the big things too is, this is one of the things my show is like. We're at 5 o'clock, so basically we write entire shows sometimes, like at least 3 days a week, and then some crazy news will come in, and like at 4:45, they're like, crumple that whole thing up, throw it out because breaking news. So it's actually kind of fun like that. But one of the things that we like to do is we dig pretty deep. Like we were in this whole the oil currency, how Saudis stopped trading. We hit that story on Monday, and nobody else covered it until like Wednesday. It was trickling into today. Like we spent a lot of effort. I have a phenomenal team. Look into a lot of stuff. We have a lot. Being in the military, I have a lot of sources from other places that can at least point us in the right direction for a lot of things. But most media is not even trying to give you the immediate stuff. They're trying to give you something to make you think a certain way. They don't really care about informing you. They care about indoctrinating you. And look, we don't do that. I mean, we have every host, like obviously, like I don't hide it that I'm a Republican. I don't hide it that I'm a Trump supporter, and I give everything through that lens. But at least I don't lie to you about it. I'm not like, oh no, I'm middle of the road. I'm not. I'm just not. But I'll always try to give you at least what I can perceive as the other side, and just reporting from an area of like hey, let's poke holes in everything. Like, ask questions about everything. And oftentimes it gets me to an incredibly different story than what all the rest of the media is saying. Because if you ask a couple questions, most of these narratives and most of these talking points completely fall apart. And that's one of the things we try to do before we get on air. And if even on air real time, if we can, it's just, I have no problem criticizing both sides.
All right, this will be our last question.
There's a couple back here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Looking at your book, The Heroes Who Profiles in Freedom and the Heroes Who Shaped America, how did you determine who to include, and was there one out of those you did include that really surprised you?
How did we determine who we put in the book? Dartboard. No, I'm just kidding. It was no. We originally had almost 35 people for this, and we had to narrow it down. There were some people like John Henry, who's like a personal favorite of mine. We wanted to put in Man versus Machine. He beat the steam engine machine, driving stakes on the railroad. We couldn't verify him, so like there were a number of people that we pushed out. We also, like, I had originally written about Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and then we decided to put only people who have passed. So we stopped with we were able to get through some of those people, but also we kicked out some of the more mainstream names. Like, we kept Ben Franklin and George Washington, but we wanted to put less mainstream names in there because I think that obviously that new book Oppenheimer, or the new movie Oppenheimer, came out. I wrote that chapter before that book came out, so we wanted to make sure that people like that got a piece of the action here.
Carl, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So at the beginning, you sort of talked about, you referenced history and democracy as every 250 years.
Mhm.
Is that cyclical, or what is that based on, and if we're at 248, what happens in 2 years? I've never heard that before, and it's intriguing to me.
Hopefully a zombie apocalypse, because I would absolutely love that. But no, here's the thing: is like, you look at the British Empire. Okay, like, yes, they were they started in the 1500s, but their peak was 1776 when we kicked their ass. So there are other empires out there that have gone, the Ottoman Empire and things like that have gone for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they really peaked at 250. And it just, I was actually looking at like how long these empires last, and I was like, oh man, it's kind of like all in the same ballpark here. And I think it's this slide where empires rise, and it's the saying that hard men create good times create soft men create hard times create hard men. And I think that what happens is when societies get so good, like, we live in the first country in, I think, the history of the world where it's like, you don't choose, you're not like, am I going to eat tonight? It's like, which grocery store do I want to go to get which food that I want? Oh, and they don't have my, X food here. I'll just go to the one down the street. Like, it is so good here in America, even among the richest American, like, you take, Donald Trump. He's got air conditioning. The poorest Americans have air conditioning. And, he might have, 5 cars, but he doesn't have, 4 billion cars. And then you've got, somebody who's one of the poorest Americans. They have a car. And it's like, if I get hit by a bus, or Donald Trump gets hit by, well, not him, but like Elon Musk gets hit by a bus, the richest man in the world, and the poorest person, there's somebody outside who's living on the street, we all go to the same hospital to get the same treatment as the poorest Americans and the richest Americans. So it's like, when countries get that good, we start inventing shit to be mad about, like transgender stuff. It's like, your pronoun in your LinkedIn bio is not my concern. It's not a real problem. And if you didn't have, like, cinnamon on your coffee, I'm sorry that you're all upset about that, but it's not real problems. And we become so well off and so happy, so prosperous that we forget what we came from. Like, there's not a person here today in America that really well, I shouldn't say that. There's not many people here in America that really know the struggles of, the poorest things. Like, when I was in, like, Chad, Sudan, and Nigeria, I'm looking at these people, like, 50% of the world doesn't even have clean drinking water. Yeah. And here we are, worried about pronouns. So that's kind of the cycle. When you have it good, you lose track of that stuff.
All right. Well, we can take some personal questions.
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
walk around. I'll
side.
be here.
I know we have some books to sell.
Cool.
I'll just stick this over for just a second. Thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. I just have a few announcements for the club before we get back to drinking, buying books, taking pictures, getting them signed, all that good stuff. We have a few upcoming events. Tomorrow we have the cigar night hosted by the Queens Hispanic and Veterans Caucuses. So with Troy, so if you like cigars, head on down to that. The biggest event of the summer we have coming up on Saturday, June 22nd, the 3rd annual Rooftop Independence Day Bash. Every year it's amazing, so wear your cowgirl hats if that's what you're into, boots, and come out and support America for that. Always a good time. And on June 26th, we have a Social for Life. Is that a philanthropy event? Okay. Black and Catholic Caucus, the Social for Life, June 26th. And not on my list here, but June 27th, we're actually hosting a debate watch party for members only. So if you're not a member, make sure you join before then. And we're looking forward to the debate, assuming it happens. If some tragic Biden crisis doesn't come about, expecting a pretty significant victory there for our loyal leader. But I just have Nicole, you wanted to come up and just say a few things about volunteering, and then we'll let everyone resume activities. But don't forget to buy a book. I'm excited to read it.
Hey guys, thank you so much for coming. I'm Nicole, I'm the campaigns committee chairwoman. I just wanted to say we have the biggest volunteer team in the state, frankly, probably in the country. We work very closely with the Trump campaign. We send dozens of volunteers out for our Republican candidates and provide all sorts of help for them. So please consider joining our volunteers team. My wonderful co-chairman, Mario Nicoletto is here. So please talk to him, talk to me. Every single volunteer in our volunteers group makes a huge impact on election results in New York. And I have been the chairwoman of the campaigns committee for the past 3 years, and I have seen each volunteer make a huge difference with my own eyes. It's really incredible. Our time commitment is very low, so you don't have to devote hundreds of hours to this. Even 2-3 hours on a Saturday makes a huge difference. Please come talk to us or email campaigns@nyyrc.com. Thank you.